Last week, I ran a little experiment on my Instagram. I did a post and I asked you guys to comment and say, would you like me to audit your Instagram? I'm going to send you 3 tips on how to improve your Instagram. And I got a ton of responses and I've done a ton of audits. And today I'm going to share with you the 5 top things I learned from auditing your Instagram, the common patterns, the common trends, the common mistakes that I see over and over again that you might be making too and that you can start to implement. So let's dive in. Hello, if we have not met before, hi, welcome. It's great to have you here. My name is Jackie and I am a business owner and graphic designer who is obsessed with helping other business owners who aren't graphic designers learn how to do their own branding and graphics really well using programs like Canva so that businesses can thrive and flourish and make the sales that they desire. And just on a personal note, this might be my last ever recording in this office. I am about to move houses. Our home build we've been working on for like 5, it's been 4 years, 4 and a bit years since we bought the block. And I'm so excited that it's almost here. And so the build is technically finished. So now we're up to approvals and stuff. So we'll see if next time you see me, I am in the build and I've got like a bare bones office, or if I am still sitting here, which will also be fine. All right. So let's dive into these things that I learned from auditing your Instagram. If you are not yet following me on Instagram, I highly recommend doing that because then you might not miss out the next time I do one of these audit requests, because I may do them occasionally now because they were actually quite fun and I learned a lot. And so my handle is whitedeergd. Follow me over there. Even say hi, say, Jackie, I came across from watching you on YouTube or listening to the podcast. I would love to just put a face to a name of a nameless person that it's so hard talking to the camera and I never get to know you. So feel free to message me on Instagram and say, hi, I'm following you because I listened to this episode. I'd love to connect. So let's dive into observation number 1. And by the way, stick around to the end because number 5 is probably my favorite and less to do with design. So one of the biggest things that came up was consistency, especially in fonts and colors and the overall vibe. If you've listened to my podcast for any length of time, you'll know that consistency is so important. But what you might not be doing is actually implementing things. And so consistency, what I mean by that is this idea that every single post you do for your business, honestly, anything visual in your whole brand should be building up your brand message. If you are a playful brand, you want people to feel fun and inspired, or if you are a nurturing brand, you want people to feel X, Y, and Z, or if you're a really luxe brand, you want to kind of show luxury, and every single thing that we do needs to be backing up whatever that message is. And so in your Instagram in particular, we want our branding and our graphics and our posts to be visually consistent. That means every single time you're doing what I call a designed post, we want you to use the same fonts, the same colors, the same visual vibe. Now, there's a couple of caveats I want to make here. Firstly, particularly on Instagram, you don't need to make every single post perfectly designed and perfectly curated. In fact, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend you go onto Canva and design every post perfectly. That is because Instagram is in the era of feeling like it's wanting authentic content that people can relate to. So what I actually recommend instead of doing every single post perfectly designed is having 2 to 4 out of every 6 posts designed, like Canva, doing a fancy pants graphic, and the rest being more organic content. So by organic content, what I mean is like a reel where it's just you being in the reel and you put some text on top, or even just a photo by itself, or a photo where you've added text on top again, but just inside Instagram. We don't have to have things perfectly curated in order to make sales. So what I recommend is that mix between that curated content and the more organic content, because when someone then comes to your page, they're seeing a real person, and real people are far more likely to connect, especially in this era of AI. And so that is your differentiator. That is your connecting point. So don't feel like everything needs to be perfect. Show the real you. Show a random picture that's not even a studio photo. But then when you are doing those posts that are designed and curated, make sure they are on brand. I want you to always use those same fonts, always use the same colors that are part of your color palette. You don't have to use every single color from all of your color palette in every single post, but the whole thing as a whole needs to be cohesive. And not just that, but the whole elements. Like, do you have brand elements? Do you know the way that you do a box? When you do a box on your graphic, is it see-through or is it not see-through? Is it got rounded corners or square corners? Is it like a piece of paper or is it a really clean box? Every single decision like that we can make for our brand. So the way that you do boxes, the way that you lay out your text, the effects you put on your text, the little illustrations you might use, the style of your illustrations, the style of logos, the style of your background, the textures in your background. All of those things actually need to be decided on decisions. If that's feeling overwhelming, by the way, I have a course. It's called DIY Design My Biz. And I've literally actually just on top of my mind, I've just recorded module 6 if you're in the program. And inside there, I go through how to collect and collate brand elements. So how to decide on what kind of boxes you're going to use, how to find the right icons, how to find the right this and that actually build up your brand and support the message you want to share in your business and help you to show up really consistently. Because when you have graphics that are really consistent, it really sets you up for success. It shows people that you know what the heck you're talking about. Someone that's going to, if people see you showing up consistently in your feed, subconsciously we think they are showing up consistently in their business and in the way that they serve. If I see a business that's kind of haphazard everywhere, I'm like, one, do you know what you're talking about, or are you still trying to work things out yourself? And two, are you going to show up haphazardly in the way that you communicate with me as a client or a customer? And so I think that consistency speaks volumes to our trust and how much people want to trust us, and also to building brand recognition. If you are showing up differently all the time, people can't begin to recognize you. In fact, this top that I'm wearing, if you're on YouTube, is a top that I just got sent in the mail. Like literally just opened up my mail. Client, or not a client, someone who just follows me on Instagram, who I've talked with a couple of times. Shout out to you, Robin. She asked for my address and she sent me this top because obviously she knows that my brand colors are purple and green. And in her head, when she saw this top in the shops, she purchased it for me and sent it to me because I was that much on her mind. And while you don't have to commit to a color quite as much as I have, all that to say is there is incredible power in showing up consistently because people will begin to recognize you. So just have that consistent look on your Instagram. It'll share the same message. It'll set you up as a pro, and it will help to create brand recognition, among other things. I could literally talk about consistency for a whole podcast episode or two, and I probably have in the past. All right, let's move on to observation number 2. Fonts will tell your brand story. So like I mentioned in consistency, you want to have consistent fonts. And so by that, I mean, don't just try a new font every single time you do a post. Don't just see a cute Canva template and think, oh, yeah, that's nice. I'll just whack on my colors or my text and post it. No, you need to change everything, including your fonts, because fonts tell a story. Fonts are communicating what your business is about. You could have a really playful font or a really kind of clean and luxe font, and they are saying vastly different things. And if you don't have fonts that are representing what you want your business to represent, then there's going to be either confusion about your brand, or more often than not, is people just have way too many fonts that are all saying different things, and it's diluting your brand message. It's confusing people onto what you're about and if you're for them, because people, when we go to someone's website or Instagram page or anything, we as an audience or a reviewer are thinking, is this business for me? I can guarantee consciously your audience isn't saying, that font looks like it's a playful font and I'm not a playful person, so I won't work with them. But they are making judgments around what kind of business you are. And then from that, they're deciding if they want to work with you or not. And so when you're doing your Instagram, pick 2 to 3 fonts, even one, 2 or 3 fonts, and use them for everything. Don't change other fonts. If you get a template, strip it down and change the fonts to only your brand fonts. And you don't need to use all of your brand fonts in every single graphic. You may just want to use 1 or 2, but have that little collection of fonts that you can use for different things in your graphics. And for me, for example, I have a font I often use for my headings, I have a font I often use for my body text, and I also have what's called an accent font that I use if there's like a little kind of pull out that I wanted, like a little kind of scribble on the side, or maybe a subheading or an extra point, and I'll put that in my accent font. Again, if you're struggling with fonts, I have a whole font module inside my DIY course, and if you want to look into that, I'll put a link below, but it's really important that you have those fonts that are sharing the right message. All right, let's move on to observation number 3. Size and shape really matter. I was actually surprised to see this because I thought everyone was doing this already, but it turned out that they weren't. And that's my bad if I haven't talked about it enough. Make sure your Instagram posts are portrait size. And there are 2 portrait sizes. So in Instagram, you can post a square, you can post landscape, or you can post portrait size. Portrait size is the tall post. And so inside your Instagram, you want to be doing that portrait size, that tall post, unless for some reason you're a photographer and you're wanting to share a landscape shot. Other than that, everyone else should be using portrait size. Portrait size is really great because for 3 reasons actually. Firstly, it means that it's taking up more space when someone's scrolling on their Instagram. If you're scrolling and you scroll past a landscape shot, it's really quite short. It doesn't take up much room. And so you can get scrolled past really quickly. Secondly, it looks far better in your grid because your grid will always crop things to being that portrait kind of tall size. And so if you're posting landscape pictures or square pictures into your grid, you're going to find they're getting trimmed on the edges and a lot of your key imagery or text is being chopped off, and it looks quite unprofessional and slack. And thirdly, portrait posts give you more space to design with. If you've got a lot of text or imagery you want to add into your design, if you have a portrait, you've got a lot more room to actually fit that stuff in. So it means your design is going to feel less cramped. So a portrait size post, just for those of you who like actual measurements, is 1080 wide by 1350 pixels high. But there's a caveat here. If you want to, Instagram also does allow 1440 high, so 1440 pixels high instead of the 1350, which is an even better size because it's even taller. So you've got more room to take up the scroll, more room to design with. And it also means that your post won't be getting cropped at all on the Instagram grid. When you post the standard portrait size, which is a portrait size that Canva will recommend to you, then a little bit, 33 pixels on each side of your design is going to get chopped off, which isn't usually a big deal, but just thought I'd make a note of that. And just a caveat, if you do want to do the 1440 one, remember that you can't boost posts or schedule them from the Meta app. You've got to post directly into Instagram, which I do. I schedule directly from the Instagram app, and I also don't boost posts. That's not an issue for me, but it's worth mentioning in case you wanted to try that. All right. My fourth observation was around hierarchy, which is talking about our readability and our impact. So hierarchy is this idea for, I've got a whole lesson on this inside my course, but I'm just going to condense it into 2 minutes for you. So hierarchy is this idea that we can take our audience on a visual journey through what we want them to see in our graphic. So instead of just having a wall of text, we can decide, hey, I want my audience to read this hook first, then this adjoining information, and then I want them to read this CTA and then this additional information. And we can take them on a visual journey through that. But what lots of people do is they either don't consider that or they aren't bold enough when they do that. And so what it means is that when our audience sees our posts, they feel overwhelmed looking at it or confused or that the information is irrelevant because what is popping out to them isn't something that's relevant, isn't something that makes sense to them, isn't actually even standing out to them at all. It's just a wall of text. And so what I want you to do instead is when you're designing any kind of post, this is really applicable for nearly every single thing that you ever design, is think about what do I want to capture my audience's attention with? What's going to draw them into this graphic? Then grab that text, usually hopefully it's less than a sentence, even a few words, and make that ginormous, make it absolutely huge, because that way your audience is going to be able to see that text first and then draw them in. And then what that means is that the additional text in your graphic is a lot smaller so that large piece of text can really stand out rather than just making everything large. You want large contrasted with small. That way your audience can see the main thing, be drawn in, and then read the rest of the post. This is also really helpful for your Instagram grid because it means that there's a big piece of text that can stand out when they're just looking at your grid from a grid level rather than having to click in on a post. And the last mistake or observation that I made was people weren't focusing enough on their branding. So this kind of harps back into point number one of having a consistent brand, but it also means that, like I said, you don't want to do designed posts all the time. You do want posts that are just like organic kind of style. But even when you do that, when you're just adding in a picture or you're just adding in a reel with some text on top, still make that branded. When I do this, I add in my brand colors into my text. I always use the same font on my Instagram reels or on my Instagram posts so that everything is really consistent. There's that consistent font and color happening all the time, even though it's more of an organic style of that. So bringing in your branding into everything and not just posting photos over and over and over again, because you won't look like a business. I can't see what you have to offer if you're just sharing random pictures. I want you to teach me. I want you to educate me. I want you to tell me why your service is amazing. I want you to show me that you are the thought leader so I can then trust you. Just don't be afraid to create branded content and content that actually is there to make a stand, because that way you're going to connect with your audience and differentiate yourself and set yourself up as the expert rather than just, oh, here's a picture of my cat today. Like, own your area of expertise. Even if you don't think you're the best in the world, you only need to be 10%, like we talked about last week in the podcast episode with my guest, Sarah. You only need to be 10% ahead of your audience to be able to help them and educate them. So own your stance, own your leadership, and share content that's actually going to help or serve or even intrigue your audience. And doing that in a really branded way is important. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 observations for you. Just as a bit of a recap, we've got consistency and making sure that you're having that same look everywhere, making sure that you don't have too many fonts because they all tell a story. And if there's too many, it's going to be telling too many stories and being confusing for your audience. Making sure that your post size is on that portrait size, unless you have a reason to do it any differently. Making sure that you have really great and clear hierarchy with large text versus small text, and making sure that your branding is showing up as often as possible. Adding in your brand colors to every single thing that you put up. Even wearing your brand color in your photos or in your reels is going to be so, so helpful. Even if you just have one token jumper that's your brand color, it's going to make such a difference. And so if you're thinking, oh, I need to work on so many of these things, or I don't know where to start, either jump into my DIY Design My Biz course, or if you're looking for a free option, head up to my free masterclass, Design Tools to 100K. And there I'm going to share some really visual examples of a few of these mistakes, give you some incredible Canva hacks, and also show you how to edit a template to make sure that your designs are looking incredible every single time, because we want to make you sales from your designs rather than making you waste your time in Canva. So thank you for joining me today. Let me know which of those tips was your favorite. If you're joining me on YouTube, pop it in the comments and I would love to know. And make sure if you're not already, hit me up on Instagram. My handle is whitedeergd, so you can catch the next Instagram audit. See you next time.